So you also talk about giving attention to positive things and things we want to see more of. So what do you mean by that?
So, back to the beginning where we talked about every behavior serves a purpose. A behavior that receives a response is going to continue. So, that response could be positive or negative, but we're probably most likely going to see it continue. And a behavior that doesn't receive a response, or it receives a consistent response or consistent guidance every time, is one that we're normally going to see fade. So, let's use whining as an example. Okay. Many kids will experiment with whining, and it's not the most pleasant thing to listen to, right? And when we react to the whining, we will see it continue because to them, I whined and mom either gave me what I was looking for, or I whined and I whined and I whined, and mom eventually got really mad and told me to stop whining, right? These are just examples, but one way or another, whining typically receives a response, positive or negative. And so we see it continue and continue. But what if we stepped back for a second and we said, okay, whining is a behavior that we don't want to see anymore. We want to fade this, okay? And we decided that we were either going to not give it any attention or we were going to give it consistent attention. So I'll give you an example of both of those sides because every family is going to choose a different way that fits their parenting style. So the no attention would simply be that whining is something your ears can't hear. And this would be, you're standing in the kitchen and you're making dinner and you've got a little one at your leg saying, I'm hungry, I want food, right? And they're whining that they want to eat. And you simply don't hear it. They're safe. There's nothing wrong in that moment, but your ears don't work and don't hear whining. And the second that they stop whining and they call your name in an appropriate tone or they change the way they're asking, we give it a ton of attention. So in that moment, we say, oh, were you asking me something? I can hear you now. Very good. Ask me again. Tell me what you need. We get down on their level. We look in their eyes. We give it so much attention to the behavior that we want to see more of instead of acknowledging the whining behavior. And so often we acknowledge it in a negative way. We say, oh, stop whining, or say it differently, or, you're whining, I can't answer you. And we just acknowledge the whining, but not acknowledging it. And then responding in a big way to the language we do want to hear shows them what type of behavior received the response that they were looking for. So that is a way of not responding at all. Another way, though, for parents who are like, well, I'm not going to ignore my little one, right? Maybe they're not comfortable with that personally in their parenting style. Another way is to acknowledge that it's happening with consistency. So this would be maybe coming up with a sentence that you say consistently every time that you hear that whining. And that could be something like, say it nicely and mommy will answer. And let's say they whine again, you can say it nicely and mommy will answer. This is just an example I made on the top of my head, right? But coming up with one sentence and responding consistently every time, and they're whining about any subject, doesn't get an exact response about the subject, but instead gets a consistent response until they change the way that they're talking. That's another way to guide this. So we're giving attention to what we want to see more of, and we're giving less attention or no attention to what we want to fade.
Awesome. Does this kind of response work also with like doing something they shouldn't be doing? So if they're like jumping on their bed or, something like that kind of behavior, would it work as well with that? Or is that a little bit different?
It can be the same, but safety is number one. So if it's whining, there's no concern that your little one's going to fall off the bed or get hurt or anything like that. So an ignoring situation, making a choice to ignore that is okay. But if we're jumping on the bed or we're, throwing a toy and it might hit somebody, then of course safety is absolutely first. And then ignoring isn't an option in that situation, but consistently responding is one of the best things we can do. So if you're noticing that your little one, let's say, is hitting a lot, that's a way where we can control their hands, pull their hands down, even turn them away from us where we're holding them and they're safe, but they're not able to physically hit us in that moment. And we're not making eye contact and giving attention to the actual behavior. We're making sure, controlling the hitting, making sure that everyone is safe. And then when we calm down, then we can talk about the hitting again when emotions are lower. But in that moment, let's say you've grabbed their hands to make sure nobody's hurt. Let's say you've turned them around in your arms and you're giving them a hug. Maybe their back is to you. Maybe you have a consistent statement in that situation as well, where you say, hands are for hugging, not for hitting, or something like that, where you come up with your sentence and you repeat it consistently. Maybe even model some of those calming strategies as you're holding them. You could go, right? And you're kind of modeling that in those big moments. And then when they calm down, we can talk about it some more. So every situation is going to be a little bit different, but taking a second, stepping back and deciding, how am I going to handle this situation, right? Especially if it's something that's repeated a lot and you're seeing them constantly jumping on the bed or constantly doing X, Y, or Z, you can come up with what your consistent guidance method is going to be to help fade that behavior.